888 pages. That is how long Mandate for Leadership 2025 is. This is the book that is the foundation of Project 2025, and I read the whole thing. I've done 2 other videos about it so far. The first one talking about just some facts about it that you need to know that are important, that I feel like are getting lost in the whole shenanigans of everyone's stuff online. The second one is 5 core truth assumptions that I believe the writers believe and that you need to deal with that are much more effective than just trying to deal with the policies that they offer, is dealing with these actual truth assumptions from the writers of the book. And then in this video, I just want to give you my 3 kind of personal takeaways that I had from reading this book. So let's jump into it. And I'm actually going to start with kind of a number 0. I did this in one of the other videos, but my kind of little bonus takeaway here for one of this is I'm not a speed reader, but I read much faster than almost anyone that I know. And I know that I read much more than almost anyone else that I know. I have heard a lot of people claim online, I read Project 2025. And after having read it now and looking at it and going, okay, I spent 30 hours reading through this document. I'm a little doubtful on some of the reviews that I have read and some of the people that I have seen that said that they read the whole document. So just be wary, be cautious, even of me. I mean, like, I can't prove that I read the whole document to you, right? But there's just some people that I'm like, really? I mean, it took me 30 hours, and I know I read like a solid 50% faster than most people. Wow, that's impressive. Okay, sure, yeah, I don't know. Sure, why not? Okay, but really, takeaway number 1 that I want to talk about from reading this document is that our government is huge. I literally had no idea until reading this document, because the point of this thing is to give recommendations for all areas of government, right? So they literally go in, and I mean, like, one of the first chapters is talking about the White House, and it's going through the White House staff and just listing the staff positions in the White House. And it's just page after page after page after page after page after page after page of positions just in the White House. And I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, how does anybody keep track of any of this stuff? And then it's like, oh yeah, and this one thing, this one area of life is governed by these 7 different government regulatory agencies and stuff. Like, it's absolutely insane. One of the biggest things that stuck out to me was in the chapter about the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And they said, were the HSS a separate country, its approximately $1.6 trillion budget would rank as the world's 5th largest national budget. And this is one area of government. Like, this is just one department. This is the Department of Health and Human Services. And if it was a nation, it would be the 5th largest nation in the world. You guys, like, the government is huge. It is absolutely huge, right? And that kind of leads into my second takeaway with this, which was they make very early on in the book, they make this argument that the role of the government is to support the president, right? And that's a big assumption of this document and of the recommendations, the policy recommendations that they're making. And it goes back to this, if you watch my second video, it goes back to the underlying truth assumption that the deep state is real, it leans left, and it goes against the will of the people when there's a conservative president. That whole idea really didn't sit with me well at first when I first started reading it. They're like, yeah, like what needs to happen is you need to dump this guy out and dump that guy out and put somebody in who will support the president's vision, right? And this is what so many people are taking to reinforce this lie that it's like, oh, the document is written by Trump and it's Trump's plan to make the state, install himself as king because it says they're going to put people in there that support the president, right? And if you go back and watch my other 2 videos, like, that's very much not the case. That's not the facts. There's tons of facts about it that we can deal with, that you should read or you should watch and understand. But the reason why they put such an emphasis on this thing is because government has expanded so much. And there is such a huge cadre and such a depth of unelected bureaucratic officials that what happens is when a conservative president is elected, then the will of the people obviously was to move in more of a conservative direction. And then when the president puts forth his policies and he has his vision, he has this conservative vision, which is what the people elected, when he gets there and he starts to put forward all these things, all of these unelected bureaucrats go against it and they stand in the way of that vision because they're very left leaning. And so instead of submitting and supporting the vision that the president has, which is really the vision of the people, because the people were the ones that elected that president, this bureaucracy is like, nah, we're just going to do whatever we want, right? And so it becomes insanely important to re-emphasize this idea that the government's role is to support the president. And what was so weird about this to me, and just brings like the brilliance of the founders, is like, if our government was operating more in line with how it was supposed to originally, this would never have to have been an emphasis that we had to make, because the way that the government was originally supposed to run, right, is there was basically no cadre of unelected officials who were doing who were de facto lawmaking, right? The people who were in the government were, through one form or another, they were elected, and so they were held responsible to the people and to the constituents. And what has changed in this is, as government has grown and as this body of unelected officials has just insanely expanded, the only way to rein it in, and the proper emphasis that we now have to put on stuff, is that, dude, these guys, because they're not directly responsible to the people, the only way that we can reinforce their responsibility to serve the people of the United States is by making this kind of connection through the president, where we can say, okay, well, the people of the United States elected this conservative president. And so now, if these unelected officials are going to serve the will of the people, it means serving the will of the president, right? And the thing that would be the case on either flip-flop of this, right? If the deep state existed and it leaned right, and the leftists had written a mandate for leadership 2025, right? The conservatives, at least some of the conservative voices, would come out and say the same thing of like, they're trying to make a king and like rah 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 rah, right? When the truth is, conservatives should be just as willing to make that argument if the situation was reversed, because the point of it is finding a way to hold the unelected officials accountable to the people of the United States, who they were supposed to be accountable to in the first place. So it just fascinated me, this whole emphasis on, we need to have leaders in these departments of government who are committed to working in line with and supporting the president's vision. And that sat so weird with me at first, because it's like, oh, I mean, he's not trying to make a king. Like, we're not, you just like, oh yeah, put someone over there, who's in line with the president's vision. And I'm like, that sounds a little sketch. I don't know. But then the more that I understand it, the more that I'm digging into the truth assumptions that they're making when they went to write this document, the more it starts to become clear of like, oh, really what this is about is government's role is to serve the people. And we have all these unelected officials who are not in any way accountable to the people. So how can we build things out in such a way? And what can we do moving forward to help bring things back in line so that these people are serving the will of the people who elected a conservative president? So that was just a really big thing for me. And it changed a lot from the beginning of the book when I first started reading towards the end, of really understanding, okay, why are they making the recommendations that they are? And again, that's why I made that part 2 video, because you need to understand the truth assumptions and you need to question the truth assumptions instead of just questioning the policies and looking at policies and hearing other people rant about policies and being like, see, this is Trump's plan to become a king. And you're like, okay, yeah, sure. The third and final takeaway that I had from this is, and this is going to get way more, probably pissing people off, but is that Trump derangement syndrome is like real. Like it is really real. And I knew this in a individual person level, right? Like I see all this stuff online, you see people and it's just like, there's just the people that just hate Trump and it's just like, oh, Trump is the Antichrist. And, and I've heard the term of Trump derangement syndrome, right? And, it's kind of like laughed about it, like, oh yeah, whatever. Obviously, like some people are crazy, it's like some people you're never going to be able to talk to, whatevs, right? But what is insane to me is that all of the sections of this document, they have like an overview thing, and they kind of sum up, the history of this department and kind of what's happened, and whatever. And sidebar on this, one of the things that people say all the time is it's like, well, the conservatives say that this isn't a plan for Trump, but Trump's name is mentioned 87 times inside of the document. And literally every single time that Trump's name is mentioned, it's in regards to like throughout the history of this thing, they're like, oh yeah, so, for the border stuff, like the Trump administration had X policy and now the Biden administration has X policy, right? So just as a side note for that, like the document mentions Trump's name a number of times, and so that means that it's Trump's plan and it's secretly a thing. I'm like, okay, well, here, try this one on for size. The document mentions Biden 375 times. So what are we going to say? That it's secretly a plan for Biden? No, it literally just mentions his name because it's pertinent to everything that it's talking about, right? So the point of this, though, that I want to make is that the number of times where this document is walking through things, and it's like, yeah, the Trump administration did this, and then the Biden administration came and undid that. And so the recommendation for the new conservative president is to reinstate what Trump had done, right? Which again, if you go back to my original facts video, it's like the 2016 Trump administration followed 52% or something like that of the recommendations from Mandate for Leadership in 2016, right? And so it's just like, hey, back then they did what the conservative movement recommended, and then the current administration undid that. And so now our new recommendation is just to go back to our old recommendation, right? That's not that, like, it has nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with, this is what we recommended. This is still what we recommend because it's not done yet, right? So, but the amazing thing to me was this, looking at some of these things and seeing like, oh, Trump did this, the Biden administration undid that, right? They immediately undid that. But the number of things that were like, okay, but why would they undo that? Like, it was making things better. It doesn't even go like directly again. Like, some things make sense. It's like there's some topics, that you're like, oh yeah, well, conservatives are over here and Democrats are over here, and like ne'er the two shall meet, right? But there's some things it's just like, oh, Trump did this thing, and it isn't one of these topics that is just like a super hot topic. It was just like, oh yeah, he did this thing. And then the Biden administration came in and immediately undid it. The number of situations where I'm looking at it going, but they literally would have no reason to undo that other than just like, oh, we don't like Trump. So yeah, just the number of decisions that, from at least the way that the information was presented in here, it seems like there was no logical reason to undo this particular thing because it doesn't go against like your values or whatever. And it just left me with this feeling of like, the only reason why you would undo that is like to be mean to Trump, and because you're like, everything that he does is bad, And so it just like left me with this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I feel like even at this level, this whole like Trump derangement syndrome thing of like everything that he did was bad, even when it was good. And you're like, it's not possible for him to have done good anything. And so we're just going to undo everything, no matter what. Like, anything he did, just undo it. Just carte blanche, undo it, And I was just like, oh my gosh, man, like, wow, I didn't realize there was that much of that, even at that level of stuff. Like, it was just crazy. So to kind of wrap everything up, I guess the last thing that I would say is, should you read Mandate for Leadership 2025? Honestly, no, it's not worth your time. It's not that big of a deal. What you should read, if you are interested, what you should do, you should go watch, make sure you've watched all these videos, make sure you're questioning those truth assumptions and for yourself. And then what you should do is you should download the document, go to project2025.org, I think is what it is. Download the document from there and read the foreword. The foreword to it gives you 90% of what you need to know of what this document says, especially in that truth assumption sense of like, these are the core things that they're working off of. And that gives you more than enough understanding of what the thing says, what it's about, what they're wanting to do, right? And then you should just use that to question yourself, and you should use that to refine your own thinking and to have a discussion with someone else who disagrees with you, right? Not people who have Trump derangement syndrome and who are like, well, all this, but like someone who is willing to actually engage in these ideas and not argue about the solution when we haven't even agreed on the definition of the problem, or agreed to disagree on the definition of the problem, right? as I've said throughout all these videos, what you need to be doing is trying to properly define the problem and coming to an agreement on what the problem is. The biggest issue that we have in all of these discussions throughout the political times especially is that we argue about solutions while having no understanding even to ourselves of what we think the problem is, right? We've never actually done any work to define it. And we definitely don't have any consensus either to agree or to disagree about what the problem is between people who aren't on the same side of things. So if we can talk about the definitions of what the problems are, we'll get infinitely further than if we just keep on yelling and screaming about all these stupid things about the solutions when, again, if you misdefine the problem, you'll misapply the solution. So remember that. Download the document if you're interested. Read the foreword. It's very, very good, and will give you a good idea of everything that it says. And then beyond that, just go and talk to people and ask people questions and question your own thinking. And don't give in to the yelling and the screaming and all the and don't give in to all the people who are sitting here saying completely contradictory things. Right? Read it for yourself. Know for yourself, and then just talk to people about it and actually be a decent human being, please. That's all I got. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Oh, man, I'm going to shut up now. So I'll talk to you guys in the next one.